in wanting to expand, it's like about being comfortable. And what I said about being on the crutch is like, yeah, I didn't need to change my diet. I didn't need to do a triathlon because guess what? Like I could have gone, just kept going to work. Like everything was fine. I go surfing on my days off. I really, I was still working. I was lifting weights when I wanted to go for a jog. But then it's like, what is that it? And I think I thought if I died tomorrow, do I want everyone to remember me for this fried chicken? I was like, no, that sucks. Oh, the fried chicken's good. Okay, I haven't eaten in a long time, but I remember it being very good.
I bet it's really good.
People really enjoy it.
Besides the chicken part.
I was like, I don't want to be remembered for that. I feel like there's something bigger that I could be remembered for. Still, I don't know exactly what that is, but I think in what I was doing, physically, both from training and changing the diet. And then what I was starting to kind of hone in on mentally was maybe I could help people. And that's how, the Instagram started. Because I used to post a picture of food occasionally and friends would be like, man, that looks great. And then they wouldn't even show up to eat it. So I just started posting pictures of the training and quickly people really gravitated to that. And people I didn't even know. And they found it to be inspiring, or they found it like, yeah, wow, I'm gonna go work out today, and I was really excited by that.
Hello, YT community. Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete podcast. I'm Jess, and this is the very place where we share stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose. Some of us are born go-getters, and others need a little more kicking in the butt to get moving. But I'm here today with two major go-getters. Actually, I'm going to throw Bubba into the mix and say I'm here with three major go-getters. I got Beej, my co-host. I got Bubba, the 10-year-old pit bull, and I got our guest, Jared Simons. Jared is a plant-based Ironman triathlete and professional chef who once had a dream of going to college on a wrestling scholarship, but those dreams ended, which landed him working in a restaurant, the exact place he was meant to be. So a crushed dream sounds like a great place to start, Jared. Thanks for having us over today.
My hopes and dreams.
That's where we like to jump in.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're in your beautiful home here in the canyon, and we've had so much rain in Southern California. It's just super green and amazing, and we are gifted the presence of Bubba, your dog, who is so badass.
He just stares at you.
He is badass. He's not that into training.
No, he doesn't look like he's into training.
He's more into the rest day.
I think he just did his training. He came under the table, said, "There's not enough freaking room here for me to sleep," and
go back to bed.
And then he left.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go back to that crushed dream. Because I think that, like I said, like I was just saying, that these challenges and the ebb and the flow and the fear and the, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And now I'm not going to do that. This is all a part of the process. It's all a part of what I consider to be like our divine blueprint that I think is always molding and changing based on the choices that we make. But for you being a high schooler, and I don't know how ingrained that was into your soul that you thought that was what you were going to do.
Well, I think, growing up playing sports, when I was, very young, it was Pop Warner football, and that turned into high school football. But in my sophomore year, I started wrestling year round, and that was kind of what I excelled at. And after my junior season, I went to the California State meet, so I kind of had big expectations for my senior year and some interest from colleges. And I started having issues, I guess it was more or less nerve issues in my arms, my legs, and my folks took me to a few different doctors. Each one of them, gave me a different reason what was going on and why it was going on. But in the end, they all thought that contact sports probably weren't the best thing for me, seeing that that I had some sort of neck trauma. So my parents were like, "You're done. You can't wrestle anymore. It's too dangerous. We don't want you to get hurt." And I had been working in a restaurant, and to pass the time, I started working in the restaurant more, almost to the point where my grades really started to suffer. But I was really enamored in what I don't know, what I saw in the restaurant, what I felt in the restaurant. And the only way I can explain it really is it was very much like an episode out of something that you might find in an Anthony Bourdain book. When you're 16 and everything you're seeing it was a very exciting place. So when the time came for college, I had told my folks I had mailed in all my college applications, which I actually never did, and had just had sent a letter to the California Culinary Academy in San Francisco stating that I wanted to attend their school, and that was it. And I think my folks, they were okay with that because they were quite supportive in making sure that I was happy and just wanted to do whatever it is I wanted to do. However, it was a tougher sell to my grandparents.
And then they're just coming from such a different
Yes, very typical Jewish grandparents wanted to know I didn't want to be a doctor. They didn't understand the profession of being a chef. But I told them, it was what I wanted to do. And, from a young age, I was a little heavier, and I always enjoyed being around the kitchen. I don't know if it was the emotion to food or I ate emotionally, but I always found myself in the kitchen and eating. And so from that, even prior to cooking in a restaurant, I always wanted to help with the family dinner, or breakfast on the weekends or whatever it was.
So there were all these signs that this was a natural pairing for you, like flow. We had talked about that, like how you guys landed this amazing home, how it just kind of all was flow, right? There's no real reason why you should have been put to the top of the list and said, hey, you guys can get this house. And it's, for some of us, it's like there's something that we've kind of felt and known for a very long time. But you're like on this track to wrestling, and you had mentioned the word expectation, that you had this expectation. And I would assume your parents kind of had this expectation too. I mean, being supportive, they're just like, okay, this seems like a pretty good route for him to go. And so you're working in this restaurant, and the restaurant's just kind of like magical. You're really vibing with the energy there. And do you feel like that was really more powerful than any kind of pain of letting go of being a wrestler or being injured? Or, do you remember any of like the doubt? Because having like nerve issues like through the neck and the arms, that can be like a scary diagnosis, especially so young in your age. Yeah,
I think my parents were probably more, I would say, if we were going to use the word scared, they were probably more concerned. Whereas, I was 17 years old. I just, it is what it is. And sure, I think, looking back on it, there was some sort of depression, but, that just kind of, the restaurant became my outlet. And,
it became your focus.
And it was a focus. And growing up, in more disciplined sports such as football and definitely wrestling, the hard work and the desire to succeed, again, that just kind of fueled what I was doing at the restaurant.
Yeah. And so in the restaurant industry, you pretty much have to start at the bottom, right? For most people to get to the top. That's where I started, in the back, because I didn't want to be in the front. I was doing dishes or doing prep work.
Yes, absolutely. You start at the bottom. And
is that where you started?
I actually started as a busboy. And the gentleman who owned the restaurant, who later went on to become a mentor, he got upset the day I came in because I had dyed my hair red. And the options were to go home and dye my hair back or to start washing dishes. And I opted to wash dishes because I wanted to keep the red hair. And that was kind of how the kitchen journey began.
It's perfect.
And and I think in addition to seeing all these things going on, again, the restaurant was a very exciting place at the time. I think all the things that I liked in school, I took a drafting class. I really enjoyed science. Not so much like reading and writing, but science, like, data-driven stuff and the drafting and art. I really could, I think, early on see how cooking kind of encompassed all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for triathlon too, loving all that data and things like that.
And it seems like, well, it doesn't seem like it is the way that you've gone. You've got that will to do things your way, but you're open to the learning process. So it's not my way or the highway. there was a negotiation basically, and started with the red hair. Like, okay, I'm going to keep the red hair, but I'm going to work in the back. So you've got that flexibility. You're not just all or not, like you're not, this is the way it is, but that was planted inside of you because now you've been able to just take a restaurant concept yourself and build this your way. Right. And the training is probably follow along that same path where you've done things your way enough, but you've sought advice or maybe some coaching or whatever, but you've always had that curious aspect, keeping the mind open just a little bit.
I'm definitely more rigid than flexible.
Okay.
But there is that little bit. And, I think coming full circle to the triathlon, that was kind of, I had to let go early on to like understand to going from, what I knew as an athlete of growing up, like I said, football, wrestling, go, hard, to triathlon where it's endurance training is quite different.
Yeah. So how do you grasp the concept of letting go? Because that's a huge one, not just for athletes, but for humans in general.
I think what has really helped me was a failure. And that was my second restaurant. I actually opened a restaurant when I was 22, my first restaurant down in Carlsbad. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and at 26, I opened my second restaurant. And when I opened the restaurant, I did it without a business partner. So I wore many hats. And after almost 5 years, I was very burnt out between the cooking and the bookkeeping and playing host and doing all of these jobs. As a way to cut loose, I started going out more and paying less attention to what I was doing at work and just more on trying to decompress. And from that, the business really suffered, and I ultimately closed it. And from then on, I essentially lost everything. And so once you lose everything, it's, you've let go. You've essentially let go. And,
totally.
And I had to start from scratch. And so I think now, as I've kind of, moved ahead in life, I kind of go back to that situation and that experience and realize that, there's worse things. And
how did you pick yourself up from that?
That was a long process. I think for a long time I didn't realize I was depressed, and it kind of circled back to just the same thing as when I couldn't wrestle any longer. Obviously a different circumstance. I'm going through life not realizing what state of mind I was really in. I think you try to kind of push this stuff down and move forward. And it wasn't until I met my wife, or when we first started dating, that she recognized, like, you've suffered this loss. I think you're depressed. Like, let's talk about it. And then, from there, going back and kind of working through that.
The essence of that wrestling thing and then the failure of the restaurant, and it's all like, the essence of it will continue to show up, right? Yeah. Until we get to the other side of it. And so it took a failure. It took, for BJ and I, it took being brought to our knees financially, which I'm sure was a part of that process for you. And it's almost like in those moments, you're just like, oh, like those rock bottom moments, it's almost like you can kind of exhale there, because you realize, like, there's nothing I can do to change this situation. So how can I move forward? And you have a very strong will. As a wrestler, you have to have a strong will. You've got to be disciplined. You opened your first restaurant at 22. And so the depression piece of it, and then also it sounds like it was being fueled by a not so healthy lifestyle. And from having fitness in the past and being that disciplined athlete to now having a failed business, feeling depressed, whether you realized it or not, and then, not feeling healthy. What's the wake up call?
Well, I think it was exactly that. One day it just clicked. One day I realized I didn't want to feel that way anymore, and I needed to do something different. And that's how, for me, that's all it was one day just realizing I don't want to feel this way. I want to be in a better place. What can I do? Whatever it is, what can I do to get there?
So what was the first step?
Exercise. That was, I kind of had to regress. I had to go all the way backwards. What were the things I was doing in life when I was the most successful or the most happy? And exercise was a big part of it. Surfing was a big part of it. And I actually started gardening. So I had kind of gone all the way back to the beginning. So like with the gardening, literally getting seeds, and then this was at a time where I didn't even know if I wanted to cook anymore, something I'd done my whole life. So, but going back to the beginning, planting seeds, watching something grow, and really it was exactly what I was doing with myself. What
did you get into? I mean, it wasn't triathlon at that point, right?
No. So there had been some weight gain just due to diet.
Did you just fall into the restaurant lifestyle? Because
yeah.
both BJ and I have that background, so I know like going out at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at 11 o'clock or 10:30 when the restaurant closes. It goes.
Yes.
That's when it starts.
That's when
it was very much at my worst. Actually, prior to the restaurant closing, I would probably go out after work for drinks at least 5 nights a week, and those 5 nights would end at some sort of fast food restaurant, and then not eat all day, work, and then kind of repeat. And then on the day off or the 2 days off, order pizza, lay around, and just kind of binge. It's tough once you get into it to get out of it. And, so I had found a gentleman who went on to become a good friend of mine. He had opened a gym, and he said, dude, you need to get in shape. I said, well, I'd love to. I said, I would love to train with you, but I can't pay you. I can't afford to pay you every day. I tell you what, I'll give you trade at the restaurant. So you come and eat lunch every day, train me for an hour, done. So that was kind of the initial start of getting back into a groove.
And that was before the restaurant closed?
That was prior to the restaurant closing. So I had kind of started this program of training, weight training, a lot of just high intensity weight training, interval running, and I shed some weight and I started to feel better. Cut to, once the restaurant closed, some of the weight came back on, but I didn't fall back into the same place I was at, going out every single night, because I don't know. It was a different time in my life. So I didn't fall all the way back to it, but I was still not healthy.
Right. So the weight came off. What else changed in that period? I don't know what that period of time was from the time that you started training with this guy to the restaurant closing. But as the weight's coming off and you're exercising, you're also releasing chemicals from the brain that are making you feel better. And was that when I'm looking at this from a 10,000 foot view, I'm seeing that could be a pretty powerful piece to allowing you, even though it was huge, even though you kind of fell into that depression, even though you started having that unhealthy lifestyle, that it gave you just maybe a little bit more power to get through it?
In all honesty, it was not a mental change. It was more seeing the physical change and at least looking good on the outside.
So it didn't change the way looking good on the outside did not make you feel better about yourself.
Not at first. No, it made me, it made me feel better in the sense okay, I'm looking better on the outside. So I must be feeling better.
Right. That's a good correlation. However, you can really trick yourself.
Yeah, that wasn't the case.
The work wasn't done yet.
Right. So as kind of this cycle, as I was going through this process and, the working out prior to the restaurant closing, at least kind of had sparked whatever little bit of athlete may have been in me, left in me. And so, cut to the restaurant closing and then kind of falling into this kind of just this abyss for a little bit, then meeting my wife. And that's kind of when I picked up again, circling back to the same gentleman saying hey, I've kind of fallen off. I would love all in. I want to get back to where I was.
You had to get that restaurant, you had to get that vibration out of your life before you could go all in with the fitness and the health. And then you're now you've got love. And
yeah, because there's probably I'm just guessing here, but how many people at the restaurant were keeping physical fitness as top priority.
Yeah, none.
Well, and just
Yeah.
the vibration of a
No one-
restaurant that you
no
had to
one-
let go of.
Yeah, no one in my life outside of this one particular gentleman who similarly was going through the same situation with a business, just a struggling business. So we were in ways we related on many levels. And when we kind of both got to this place, I think we were using each other. While
Yeah,
he
you
was
did seem
training
to lift
me,
you. Yeah.
while he was training me, we're able to at least talk about situations or the circumstances we were in and kind of just get some of the things out that may have been on our mind.
Yeah.
So it was a good dynamic of us to be able to kind of, in terms of therapy, of working together.
Well, it's two of the biggest ways to help to really process energy, which is what depression is, and it's an energy, and it shows up as chemicals in the brain and nerve firings and all of that, but everything is just energy. And so one is moving the body, which is huge, and two is being in service of somebody. And you guys were in this this giving and receiving, this law of circulation. And so that's going to keep things moving. It's going to keep, whether you know it or not, the universe is at work here, and you guys are now going to keep moving because of the service that you're providing for each other. And you're kind of getting like this way to process by chatting with each other about it as well. So where does it go from the restaurant closing? You're in LA at this point.
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles. I kind of found my way through different various jobs, chef jobs, and kind of just working on other people's projects and doing what I could.
And what are you doing for the inner work? The stuff that was still hanging around, like when you met Jen, does she go by Jen?
Yes.
When you met Jen, she's kind of sees this in you. What were some of the things that you were doing to help move that along?
I think it wasn't, and I wasn't doing much. Again, I was just doing the things on the exterior. And I think her being there to talk and ask me things, questions that no one ever asked me, or kind of make suggestions, or being that she's a strong businesswoman and was also able to identify with a situation from her past. So just literally the little things. There wasn't one grand thing. It was all the little things that kind of helped me. And slowly, I think the love just was really it.
When it sounds like you were moving forward, you're moving forward through your relationship with her, you were moving forward through being open to having these conversations. You were moving forward with, okay, I need to get a job. I'm all in with the exercise. And so we can get really, I don't want to say stuck, because everything is always in motion. So I believe we're either moving forward or we're regressing. We're either progressing or regressing, like living or we're dying. And that moving forward is so potent in our ability to really get to the other side of these things. And through that, we clean up our inner house.
Yeah.
Because we feel better, right? We have more satisfaction in our life. And it's like, what are we focusing on?
Yeah, no, definitely. I was definitely moving forward, and it was all due to the relationship.
How'd you meet her?
It's funny. I dated someone that worked for her, and she kind of knew me in passing, and I don't think she really cared for me. And she later she walked into a shop I was working at, a little sandwich shop, and my look was completely different. I had my head was shaved, and I was no longer wearing the eye makeup that I was wearing when she first met me. And after a few times in the shop, she saw a buddy of mine sitting there eating, and she kind of looked at him and looked at me and realized who I was. And she stood up in the middle of a busy restaurant and yelled across the counter, "Jared, is that you?" And I just turned around and I was beet red, and I said, "Hi." And she said, why have you never said hi to me? I said, I didn't think you liked me. And it was a very funny situation. And from there, she said, oh, well, I walk my dog in the park across the street, which is Bubba. And I said, oh, I had a pit bull that I adopted. And at the time I just got too busy, and it was a puppy. I live in a very small place. And so I had passed it on to a couple that was looking for a dog. I said, well, I just given my dog away. I would love to walk with you. And, from that kind of sparked this relationship was with the dog.
I love it.
And she had gotten the dog because the therapist had told her to get a dog to learn to love again, because she was, for many years, she was focused solely on work and business. And so the dog not only taught her to love, but then, brought us together.
Nothing, like there's no being that will teach you unconditional love like a dog. And so that was a great recommendation. That's a great story, right? There's more flow.
Looking back, so where you are now, looking back, do you see any opportunities that would have presented themselves that could have pulled you out of that experience quicker? Or if you had the tools?
No, I don't, off the top of my head, there's nothing. I think I was just surrounding myself with the wrong people and the wrong situations. Yeah. And there was nothing that was, at that point, I was only going to go deeper.
Okay. Yeah, the restaurant industry, I worked in the hospitality, for a hospitality company for 20 years in my former career. So I started in these parking lots. They did parking lots, but they had 9 restaurants.
It's like the equivalent of a dishwasher, being a dishwasher.
Dishwasher. I was butlering. Yeah, it was awesome. But I moved my way up into marketing, and then now marketing all these restaurants and some multi-unit concept restaurants as well. And the environment is completely different from like sitting in an office. I was doing new media, so like website design, taking photos, social media, all that stuff. So I got a sneak peek into the back end of things, and it brought back experiences that I had when I was first in the restaurant industry of like, I think my first job was deveining shrimp. It's a very tough industry. It is certainly, the landscape of it has changed. I've been cooking over 20 years, and in those 20 years, it has changed dramatically. What I think once was, in terms of an environment, what was once probably worse than going into the military, it's not as bad now because people aren't yelling and screaming in the same way. Is that good or bad? I don't know, but it's still a physically demanding job, and it's tough. It's just one of those things. You gotta want to do it, and the sad thing is, if you really want to do it, there's not a lot of money to be made doing it. And for a chef, you're pretty much getting into it for your craft. I don't necessarily call being a chef, like a lot of people refer to chefs as artists. I don't see it so much like that, because for me, cooking is a learned skill. It's something that you can, it's very repetitive. You can become very good at it the longer you do it. I think the art comes in, as a chef, comes in curating a menu and essentially the staff and bringing everything together. All the touch points, the entrance, the marketing, the actual communication with the guests.
Yeah, the experience, the experience, that is the art. But as a job, it's a learned skill, and it's one of those things. It's tough, and so yes, I don't wish it on anyone. And anyone that's ever said to me, "I want to send my kid to culinary school," I said, "Let's talk.
Yeah,
let's talk about that."
And do you believe culinary school is something that is mandatory?
Absolutely not.
Experience is what I've seen. And my brother's a chef, and that's how he did. He just
I think I went to culinary school in 1996, and I think at the time, for what you got, the value, what you paid, it was okay value. And then I think there was this with the launch of the Food Network and all these cooking shows, and then all these people suddenly like, I want to be a chef. It really turned into a business more than, these educational institutions. And, kind of talk about starting at the bottom. You have someone, even maybe it was even a career changer, that spends all this money to go to culinary school, and they're told like, you're going to be a chef. And then they get out, they've paid this huge tuition, and then they're making minimum wage. And not necessarily washing dishes, but they're deveining the shrimp, and so it's tough.
You gotta really want it.
Yeah, I always suggest, if it, like a lot of things these days, if you really want to do it, just go get a job doing it and get as much hands-on experience as you can.
Yeah.
And do your homework outside. I think that's a big frustration I have, not with not just kitchen, but like restaurant staff in general, even people on the floor, is the lack of wanting to do homework and be more familiar with products they might be working with or wines they might be serving or whatever it is. It's a lot of just they want to punch in and punch out, and that's
I think that's probably the majority. And having been a server for a while in a very busy place in a tourist community, I've always been like, whatever was in front of me, I gave it 100%. So whether that was, whereas my sister worked at the same restaurant, she'd be going out, like taking a bite of people's food, and then bringing it out. I would, I took it very seriously, but it was really about the tips and surviving. But there were some career servers there that that are actually still there at this particular restaurant who really took it serious. But I don't think that that's the majority of any means. No. That, a lot of times front of the house is like a stepping stone to what they really want to do.
Yes. And more so in Los Angeles, it's very, very transient in Los Angeles. If, you go to somewhere in the Midwest where you have people that are career service, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But,
okay. So you're on the fitness, you're coming out of the darkness. Now you're in love. Bubba's in the family. And No Name comes in before triathlon does, right?
Correct. So actually through my wife, she said, I know this gentleman, he's working on this project and they're looking for a chef. And I said, great. I was doing something, I was fine what I was doing. I was cooking for actually a buddy of mine. And, but I was just, again, everything that I was doing wasn't really, it
wasn't challenging.
Yeah, I was just doing it.
Oh, but I feel like so many people stay there.
That's where they can't get out of. They don't.
The crutch. I call it the crutch.
Right. Yeah. So
I go and I meet with this gentleman. He says, look, I want to open this place. Doesn't have a name. I would be interested in having you do a tasting for me. He said, all these chefs that have come to interview for the job, the problem is either their food's good and they can't speak to people, they're socially awkward, or their food's horrible. So I'm looking for someone that makes really good food and can communicate with people. I said, cool, well, let's do it. So we schedule a tasting, and my wife says, well, what are you going to make? I said, I'm going to make fried chicken. She says, what do you mean? You can't make fried chicken for a tasting. You need to do like an elaborate 4 or 5 courses. And no. I know what this guy's looking for. I go to his place. I make him fried chicken. He's like, you're hired. And it was just realizing in the moment, like you just need to realize what people want. And that's what he wanted. And he's like, the job is yours. You have carte blanche to do whatever you want in the kitchen.
But that's you. That's who you are. Versus doing the 4 or 5 course meal, you'd be setting yourself up to be the person who's every chef that goes in there has been presenting themselves. Right. Like to make yourself unique, but being yourself, you made that connection with the human being that you were going to be serving to, that one-to-one connection. And whatever that meal was more important than just flowing through. Like, these are my skills. No, it's an experience, right?
Right. And I think at that, I've been cooking long enough to understand, whereas before being that very rigid chef, wanting to make it my way, this is how the food's going to be, which a lot of chefs are like that. As I got older, I really realized that it's an experience, and it is the hospitality industry. And, if you eat around Los Angeles enough, you see a lot of these older restaurants with these menus with dishes are named after people. So that was an experience someone had where the chef came out and said, what do you want? And they made a dish, and miraculously that became their dish. And that was that. And I really like that. And so
it's like, it feels more of like a co-creation than you just being behind your hard lines.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a way of putting out what you want to do, but making it so that the guest enjoys it.
Yeah. Cause they have a right to enjoy it.
And that is, I think, again, it's it's tough for especially a lot of young chefs.
It's not the norm. It's not the norm because they want them to get show up is number one, make the meal that is asked for, and then serve it.
Yeah.
And deviating from that opens up some potential for some wrong turns.
So I'm going to get back to that point in a second. So essentially, the restaurant opened, and it was presented to me to do what you like, and I said, okay, well, I kind of have this idea. It was very very much going to had a supper club feel. It didn't have a name, and so it was a very organic way to open a business. The focus was really more on the food, the drinks, and the curation of the programming because it had been a live music venue. So the now owner, he's in artist management. He wanted to preserve the culture that existed there when it was the previous space. And so the focus, rather than be on, swinging the doors open and getting as many people in and focusing on the monetary aspect, let's create a culture. And so it was a really great way for me to kind of get back into, and be more passionate about what I was doing, because it was this organic environment of making food, and it was more of like a friends and family vibe of coming. And from that, it built and built and built. Over, it's been No Name is 5 years now. Over that time, just my role grew and grew and grew, and grew beyond cooking on a day-to-day and more into the management aspect of the business. But I think that's just a natural trajectory after cooking for so many years. In that, somewhere I had free hours and was watching Vice, was watching Munchies, and ran across John Joseph's video. What I took away from it the first time I watched it was not that I wanted to be plant-based. I took away from damn, this guy's 50 years old and he's crushing Ironman races. So I come home and I say, Jen, I want to do a triathlon. And she's like, a try what? I said, well, I need to go to the bike store. She's like, oh God, sounds like another expensive hobby. And at the time I had gotten rid of the motorcycle, but there was the motorcycles. And then, I make soap in the garage and just all these little hobbies I have going on. And so she was like, great, another one. I got interested in a race and kind of started training. And in that, I kept kind of circling around, what is the best way to do this? At the time I was 38. Okay, how can I do this and really go all in and do it in a way where I'm going to, not kill myself? And I kept coming back to John's video. I kept watching it. And then I found, from there, I found Rich and read Finding Ultra. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go plant-based. So I cut something out of my diet each week for the course of 5 weeks. And by week 6, I was eating completely plant-based. And I think in doing it, what allowed me to kind of jump in and do all this was I was in a place work-wise where I was allowed to be creative. I was just in a very supportive environment. So in doing that, I really kind of started to embrace the diet more, and was even more inclined to oblige people's requests at the restaurant, and really that helped. I think, I don't know, I wanted to improve the experience even further. So once word got out that I was eating more plant-based and I was able to cook, whereas before if someone said I'm vegan, I'd say, oh, man, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you. Now it was like, come to the restaurant. I would love to make something for you. And my kitchen staff said, what are you doing? Like, you've lost your mind. And they gave me a really hard time about it. Everyone was supportive except the kitchen staff. They're like, chef, no. Like,
for some reason, it's off the norm. It's off there.
Yeah.
But they have everything there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Through this process, I'm just listening to your words, and what just keeps coming up is this, like, you're letting go. You're letting go of these hard lines. You're embracing this new diet. You're seeing what's possible. Now the community, which this whole restaurant was about, creating culture and community, is now wanting some of it and allowing you to create, and like you're expanding. basically. And through expansion, we have to let go of who we think we are.
Exactly. And I think in wanting to expand, it's like about being comfortable. And what I said about being on the crutch is like, yeah, I didn't need to change my diet. I didn't need to do a triathlon because guess what? Like I could have gone, just kept going to work. Like everything was fine. I go surfing on my days off. I really, I was still working. I was lifting weights when I wanted to go for a jog. But then it's like, what is that it? And I think I thought if I died tomorrow, do I want everyone to remember me for this fried chicken? I was like, no, that sucks. Oh, the fried chicken's good. Okay, I haven't eaten in a long time, but I remember it being very good.
I bet it's
people,
really
good.
People really enjoy it.
Besides the chicken part,
I was like, I don't want to be remembered for that. I feel like there's something bigger that I could be remembered for. Still, I don't know exactly what that is, but I think in what I was doing, physically, both from training and changing the diet. And then what I was starting to kind of hone in on mentally was maybe I could help people. And that's how, the Instagram started. Because I used to post a picture of food occasionally and friends would be like, man, that looks great. And then they wouldn't even show up to eat it. So I just started posting pictures of the training and quickly people really gravitated to that. And people I didn't even know. And they found it to be inspiring, or they found it like, yeah, wow, I'm gonna go work out today, and I was really excited by that.
So is there a way you can help with your staff now? Is there challenges?
It's a funny thing because I look at them every day and I can see them, especially guys that have been with me for several years, weight gain. They don't feel as good.
You're watching it from the outside.
Stomach issues.
As any new plant-based person does, and I know our friend Daniel is in this zone right now.
Oh yeah.
It's that urge to like shout it from the mountaintops that I feel so good and you should be doing this, but yet that can immediately turn people off.
It does, and they still give me a hard time, but they in a weird way they embrace it to a degree because I started doing my plant-based night. I do it one Sunday a month at the restaurant. It's a night we're closed, and I opted to do it on a night we're closed so that I didn't want vegans to feel ethical. Like if an ethical vegan came, like, oh well, they're cooking other food. It's like, hey, we're actually closed. I'm doing this special, so it's guests that are weekly fried chicken eaters because they love the cooking, all the way to ethical vegans and everyone in between. And so the staff has slowly started to embrace these Sundays because they realize they're going to happen whether they want to do it or not. But it's kind of, from a creative perspective, force them to maybe think outside the box, because what I've tried to do is, being that it's 4 courses, I try to get one of them to work on at least one of the 4 courses and kind of put it in their box and be like, look, this is what I'm thinking. I'm gonna put this on you. I'm gonna put this dish on you. I want you to work on this. And it gets them thinking about it. And then, for a few days after, they're like, okay, I'm gonna eat healthy, and then they fall off. But at least we come back to it every month.
And you're like you said, it's a skill, it's a learned skill that they now have in their toolbox, because plant-based is more and more and more. So those requests are going to come in more and more and more. And I don't know if you were thinking about Stefan and Jules when we had Jules Foods on our podcast. I don't know if you know those guys.
No, I do.
Kitchen,
we met through Instagram.
Yeah.
And he had told me about the cheese that she was working on.
It's really good.
And it was probably like a year before they actually made it. And I kept bugging him because at the time, this was almost 2 years ago. I said, there's not a lot of great stuff out there, but what you're describing to me sounds amazing. And one Sunday night, they showed up at the restaurant for a dinner.
Oh, they're so cool.
And I said, awesome. Wow. I go, oh, I didn't know you lived in town. And he said, well, we don't. We drove from San Diego. And I'm like, oh my God. Well, I was touched. And they brought me 2 wheels of cheese.
So what'd you think about it?
I ate them so fast.
I know, I crushed them.
And I was like, yo, I need more. And he's like, again, we're trying to get the production up. Yeah. And I'm like, when you do, man, give me a steady flow, because as a product, and I'm in a position where always sampling things and seeking out and sourcing ingredients, especially, obviously now plant ingredients. I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, it's legitimate.
And I was
brie.
I was a big cheese eater.
Me
big.
too.
So,
Huge brie, goat cheese, smoked Gouda, bring it. I mean, that was a big investment. It was like the best of the best kind of cheese. Manchego. Oh, I used to dream about it. But when we had those guys on the podcast, because they have an amazing story, Stefan was saying, like, when he finally went plant-based, he was like, I just felt like I owed a lot of people apologies, because he's like, as a chef, I would get so angry, when they wanted did you have that
I was
too?
the same.
When people were trying to, what was happening is the
resistance.
universe is trying to rattle your hard lines a little bit. And maybe you fought back a little bit.
Oh, I fought. I was like, what are you doing? And it's funny because when I met Jen, she was vegetarian. And we went out on one of our first dates, and we went to it's called Pacific Dining Car. It's like an old steakhouse. It's open 24 hours, and they don't offer a hamburger on their dinner menu. They offer a hamburger steak, which I always thought was amazing. But it was the middle of the afternoon, and I pleaded with the gentleman because it was like in between hours. I said, "Listen, I need a burger bun." Like rare, can you please do it? And he's like, oh, let me ask the chef. Comes back, he's like, yeah, we'll accommodate you. So the burger comes, and I cut it in half. It's dripping blood. And Jen's like, that looks amazing. And I'm like, I thought you were vegetarian. She's like, I am. Can I have a bite? And I said, whoa. I don't want to be responsible. If you take a bite of this and tell me in 5 minutes you don't feel well. And she's like, no, that looks too good to pass up. She ends up eating half my burger. Now, while I was, working out, and, was into the fitness, I still had a weakness. Every Saturday night, I would go to Wendy's and get a cheeseburger. So, we're now dating a couple weeks, and she's like, hey, can you give me one of those cheeseburgers you get every Saturday? I'm like, what? So she went from being vegetarian to eating the way I ate. And my way of eating was very rich, chef-oriented, binge. She acclimated to my diet. And then she's like, I'm not feeling good. And I'm like, well, I never feel good. Like,
I didn't tell you that.
Both don't feel good.
I just call it I call it fine dining stomach. Like, you're just always
I never feel good.
Indigestion, you're just like, your stomach's always upset. And, I just always thought that was normal.
That was normal. That was the norm.
That was normal. And then when I came home and said, great, we're going to go plant-based, she's like, oh my God, with you and you took me from vegetarian to the omnivore and beyond.
I'm going to take away
and
that.
now we're going back. She's like, I can't, I don't know if I can give up the cheese now. And I'm like, you got to. And so she was a little resistant, but we got her back on the program, but all those things, they went away. And quickly, my sinuses, my stomach, my snoring, like, things just kind of cleared up. And I've never, ever in the last 3.5 years had the feeling that I've had. I relate it to a hangover. When you wake up and you're just like, you're so hungover. That's why I used to be in a food coma, and we both generally would have Sunday nights off. So that was our night to go out together. And I'm talking like steak dinner, shrimp cocktail, wedge salad, and that was dinner, because prior to that we were somewhere else doing a late lunch. And then by Sunday night I'd be on the bed just rolling in agony of just the heartburn and just like the acid and like so people say, oh, don't you miss like whatever, don't you miss eating that steak, or don't you? And I'm like maybe there's an emotion that the like food evokes that I might miss, but I don't miss the aftermath. And that's why I always try to tell my staff now when I see them, like, I don't feel good today. I'm like, yeah, because what did you go for lunch and what did you eat?
Right.
Yeah, that connection is rarely made. That connection of this food. I'm purposefully reaching for this food. Like, it's an intentional move. I'm putting this in my mouth. It goes in my body, and 20 minutes later, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
It should be medicine. Food can be medicine.
Yeah. Versus doing that same thing, eating the food and then feeling amazing and having vibrancy and energy and clarity and all the good things that come from like all these plant foods that go in your body.
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, we have overeaten. There's a place in San Diego in Little Italy called Civico 1845, and they have a full vegan menu, and it's pretty legitimate. It's like mushroom calamari and all this stuff. And I ate a whole thing of mushroom calamari, and I never eat fried food. I felt so sick. That was on your birthday.
Yeah, you still have to balance it.
Yeah, you still
there's
like,
plenty of vegan food that's not good. But I used to think all this was hippie mumbo jumbo.
Of course.
It's just
Yeah.
food.
I'm like,
It's just food.
this is BS. Like these people, like free. And I'm a believer because I took the time, I experienced it, and actually after I did my first race, which was just a local Olympic distance, the staff asked me, they're like, Chef, are you done? Are you going back? And I'm like, well, I signed up for another race and I feel really good. I'm gonna keep with it. Because they said, well, is this forever? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know. Like, is there a forever vegan? I'm like, I don't know. All I know is I feel good. And so I want to keep with it. Now it's been 3.5 years. I feel amazing.
I know. I mean, but people can listen to us all day, just like we used to listen to Rich and Brendan and all those guys, which really were our entry into it, right? For us, it was performance. I wanted to recover better. I wanted to experience these things, but I had to take that leap. I had to say, I am going to live and survive without cheese on this one meal and then take it to the next meal. But it's like you have to have that experience for yourself because you do feel better. Even if you think that you're healthy, I couldn't believe that I could feel better.
I thought
I didn't think I felt that.
I thought it was healthy.
I thought
broccoli.
allergies and sinus and waking up in a pool of phlegm. I thought that was all normal. I thought everybody woke up in a pool of phlegm,
Yeah, and the belief system that you have of what's healthy and what actually is healthy is that I was eating pasta. I think I was buying from Stop and Shop a big box from the back of just pasta, and I would have pasta every night. And I'm not saying pasta isn't bad. I'm an endurance athlete, so I love pasta, but you don't have to have it every night.
Yeah,
and it's just that mentality that what you're doing is healthy, and if you can make that connection, like we were saying, if you just make that connection with how you feel,
just be awake to the choices that you're making.
Yeah,
will be really helpful for the world. So you do your Olympic. Where does Ironman come in?
Yeah, my first season I did 3 Olympic distance, and towards it was the summer. The coach I was working with, I said, I think I would really love to do a half Ironman. I said, what do you think the timeline on something like that is? And he's it's the summer. He goes, you can register for Cabo. It's one of the last races of the season, and I think you would be ready for it. Cool. So I registered for the race and kind of pitched it to Jen as a vacation as well. And that's generally the best way to kind of tell your wife is like, hey, we're going to go on a vacation. Oh, really? Where? Well, there's a race. So that now she knows that every vacation is going to be around a race. But that's how I convinced her that we're going to go on this trip. It was a vacation. And I did it. And I thought going into it, like the Olympic distance, the first one was my first time was 50 meters into the swim. I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? And, I was getting kicked. I was gasping for air. But I got through it. And I had a really good time. And, as much as Jen had already said, I don't know, this seems like a really bad spectator sport. Because she said, well, when will I see you? And I'm like, when I come across the finish line. And she was there at the end and she was really stoked and taking pictures. And I'm like, okay, this could be cool. And yeah, so I'm thinking like half Ironman. Okay, I can do this. This is within my reach. But it was Cabo and it was hot. And I'm out there, I got through the bike and, I'm thinking Cabo, okay, it's relatively flat, but there's these 2 climbs in Cabo and it's on like fresh toll road where the asphalt it's brand new asphalt. So it just like radiates heat. I'm like, oh my God, is my brain going to melt? And then I got through it and I'm thinking, man, I don't know, Ironman, that seems, because you kind of, I didn't.
That is not the time to be thinking about Ironman.
I don't want to say I underestimated the course, but going into it, it was my first time. So you really don't know, like, what's it going to be like? And I got done and I'm like, oh my God.
Because you don't know what it's going to feel like. You can do the calculations and say,
I
I can
like,
do this.
That kicked
and you
my
shouldn't
ass.
actually be doing it in training, the full distance and when training low. So this is absolutely the first time you're experiencing
100%.
this, putting it all together.
And it was the first time I ran a half marathon, was in my first 70.3. So I'm like, this thing just crushed me. But I took the 2 weeks off, and we spent a week after in Cabo. So I came home, I felt refreshed. And again, I asked the coach, I said, I want to do an Ironman next year. And he's like, great, let's pick a race. And so I had picked Santa Rosa, which was 2017. And so I did Oceanside, and then kind of warmed up with Oceanside, then did Santa Rosa. And I don't know, something about that day, somewhere on the run course, I just was like, man, this is really cool. Like the energy and what I was experiencing was, while I had done the 270.3s, like suddenly this Ironman, just, I don't know if it was because I was on the run and I had the realization, like, okay, at this point, I know I'm going to finish. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was just like this moment, this aha moment. I'm like, I want to be doing this.
It's special to go that long.
Yeah.
It really is. And there's something about that marathon that is that run, I should say the run portion of that triathlon that is unlike any other distance triathlon, prior to leading up to the Ironman. There's something really special about it. And it's not just double a half Ironman. It's so much more.
Yeah, it was a great experience. And the funny thing is on the run course, I had people that had, because it was multiple loops, so you don't know who's on what lap. You're just kind of out there and everyone's just kind of doing their thing. And I had people that would pass by me or come up, or I'd pass them, or be like, hey, I follow you on Instagram. And so this was kind of the first time this had started to happen. And so I finished the race. Jen's crying. She's like, you're okay. She's more worried about me. And I'm like, I'm like, why are you crying? She's like, you just did Ironman. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm fine. You okay? You've been standing here all day. Like, she's like, oh my, you've been running all day. I'm like, I'm fine. So I go and I get some, I'm like, I just need water and I need something to eat. So I go in the tent with all the food and I get a whole plate of, they're serving pizza on one side. And I'm like, no. And then there's all this fruit. I'm like, this looks amazing. So I got a plate of grapes and watermelon. I'm like, Ian, it's like tastes like the best thing I've ever had in my life. And I'm standing there and people start to walk up to me and they're like, hey man, can I get a picture with you? They're like, you're that chef, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, do I know you? They're like, no, but I follow you on Instagram. So Jen's kind of standing back because she's typically the one in our household that people know her. She's like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, I don't know. They're fans. She's like, you have fans? I'm like, I guess so. And so I was like, take picture with all these people. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And they're like, are you inspired? I'm like, dude, you were like 2 hours ahead of me. They're like, but you're inspiring. And I'm like, cool. And so again, after the race, like on the course, I kind of had this moment. And then after the race, I kind of had this moment where like, wow, I'm like, I impacted other people's lives. And I don't know, I came home and just decided like, this wasn't, because when you first start doing triathlon, and especially maybe you sign up for an Ironman, there's so many reasons why you might be doing it. And I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know, I don't want to say, I was thinking it was a bucket list thing, but I didn't know if I was going to go back and do it. And so going into it, you just go and do it. And then afterwards, it was like, I really had that moment of like clarity of, I really enjoy this. I enjoy the training. I enjoy the lifestyle. I definitely I feel like I don't fall into the typical, like when I show up to a race, like, I don't know, people are looking at me, I'm like looking at them, like, I don't fit the typical triathlete mold. And I think because I was able to, or at least I'm thinking beyond like Ironman. I'm thinking like now, just like I did when I took the job from, going to No Name, like having this new experience, where can this take me? Or what can I get out of this? And how far can I go with it? I mean, I tell everyone, I'm like, I'm not the fastest person out there, but it's not my intention to be the fastest person out there. it's funny, someone made a comment that said, he said, oh, if your picture you took today, it looks like you weren't training hard enough. He's like, you should train hard, or if you have time to set up for a shot. So I go on his page and I'm looking, and he's posting pictures of like something like it said like hashtag transformation Tuesday. Yeah, I was never fat. And I'm like, dude, you're
missing the point, man.
I just simply responded to him like, and I told him that I go, number one, you don't know why I'm participating in triathlon. I was like, you have no idea. I go, number two, I am training appropriately for what I want to achieve. And I said, if you don't want to follow me, you don't have to. And he quickly unfollowed me. And I was like, later.
There you go. You gotta drop that low vibe.
But yeah, I tell everyone I'm not the fastest guy out there, but I try to look the best. I try to have fun, because if you're not having fun,
then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it?
Like I'll go back to Boulder, where we had our moment where we met
on the run path.
I'm walking along and I'm like, I'm just crushed. Like I am crushed. I went out too hard on the bike.
You were not the only one.
The elevation definitely, the altitude really got me. And there was a point where I looked around and I'm like, man, everyone's crushed. And you come running. I hear chef. Someone just says chef behind me, and then he passed, and then I see him stop ahead and like look up, and like he had this, like he was channeling some energy, and then he took off again. I'm like,
was that BJ?
Yeah. I'm like, and he had the white glasses on. I'm like, I know him.
Well, I was doing the same thing to you when I was trying to catch you.
And then I'm like, man, that guy, I was just starting the second lap. He was finishing, and yeah, that guy's good. I like that.
Yeah.
But when I was approaching you, like to your point of it's much more than just how fast you are. I knew you. Like there was a comfort. There was a moment of comfort. Like, oh, this guy's out here with me. I know this guy. I'm going to say hi. Like that moment in that heat and in that dryness of that race, it was super cool. And the only way I think I recognized you was the love the pain.
Yeah.
And the tats. And I was like, that I know that guy, and the beard. Like.
But even though you kind of went by and you channeled that energy and you kept going, like you were crushed at the finish. You got taken out crushed. In a wheelchair. He was like I was going half alive, maybe a quarter of the way alive.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean like we're all. That's what I love about triathlon too, especially Ironman, is everybody is full of sensation in their body. But you can still have those moments of comfort and connection.
It doesn't have to be long. I think that was like, what, 10 seconds, 15 seconds?
Yeah. And I love the way that you described like the kind of the unfolding of how Santa Rosa happened, and afterwards, and having these people come up to you and you realizing like, oh my gosh, like there's a little bit of this, my words, not yours, like this service aspect to it. And in service, we feel purposeful. It gives us purpose. And so there's people that will say to me, or maybe they listen and they go, I don't know what my purpose is. They have this whole friggin' show on purpose. Like, what's my purpose? And I think that you find your purpose. There's purpose in every moment. And it doesn't have to be something that's grandiose on paper. It could just be, preparing your child's lunch or feeding the dog. Be purposeful with it. But I think larger, expansive feelings of purpose come from exactly what you've done your whole life, that I've learned through this conversation, is just taking the next step and following the things that call you. And then you watch that there's this bigger unfolding that happens. You're taking the step, but you're always looking forward too.
Yeah.
Like what's possible here? And that's an abundance mindset. And that's when everybody benefits from that. And so having that mindset is benefiting other people, because you're putting that like, okay, how can we make this awesome? How can we, what are the possibilities here? And Ironman's all about what those possibilities are.
And I always tell people too, because probably the biggest question I get asked is like, well, how can I do this, or how can I get started? And I always tell people, just sign up for a race. It doesn't have to be a long race. It doesn't have to be a triathlon. It could be a 5K. But if you don't sign up for something, if you don't commit to something, you're never going to take the step.
So you love the data and the information, and triathlon, you can get so much data and information, but now that anything can happen on race day, and you've got to have this flexibility. You've got to have this letting go, which your career has prepared you for. But what is that dynamic for you with the data and the information and being flexible on a race day, something as big as Ironman?
Well, I think now after doing 3 Ironman races, going into these next races, those were really they were learning experiences, and taking them as learning experiences and really realizing regardless of what the data is and where I may be fitness wise, there's so many other factors that will play in. And I think it's being able to recognize what's going on around you that day. And, I think moving up here and really hiking and just being outside more and getting that connection to the nature and tuning into all the things outside of your body I'm now able to make a better decision of how I can perform or how I can go.
Yeah, that's huge. And the connection that we get to nature gives us security in feeling grounded. And when we feel in that security, we have more trust. We have more trust in our decisions. We have more trust in, what's going to unfold.
And in that same experience and what you're talking about, I just wanted to I wanted to mention leading into Arizona, you had a big challenge with your shoulder.
I had a bike crash.
You had a bike crash. It was close. Like, what was the time frame?
8 weeks.
8 weeks,
So
that's close.
I separated my shoulder. And so my now coach, I said, listen, I can't even lift my arms in a sling. And he said, I tell you what, why don't each day I'll give you a workout, just on the bike trainer. Just do the workout. And each day at the end of the day, tell me how you feel. And let's keep training. And if it comes to race day and you don't feel up to racing, I get it. But I think, you've put in all this work, why throw all that away if you don't know in 8 weeks how you're going to feel? And so the first week was a bit challenging because I sat on my trainer with my arm in a sling and literally barely pedaled, and that's all I could do.
And what's going on? What's the space upstairs? Like, what is the doubt? Is doubt creeping in?
It wasn't doubt. It was more like this. It was just more like, this sucks. Like, this sucks. Like, what am I doing this for? But then I said, I'll just do it. And then by week 2, I was kind of thinking I could run, but it didn't feel good. It just did not feel good. So right back on the bike trainer, another week on the bike trainer. And so I took 4 weeks off completely from swimming. I just couldn't swim. I didn't have the range of motion, and it hurt. So that was where a little doubt came in, thinking like, man, I'm not going to swim for, 4 weeks. And then I'm going to an Ironman race. Like, I could see like 70.3, like 1.2 mile swim. Like, cool, no problem. But then I'm thinking like, Ironman race, it's a longer swim, a lot of people, how is this going to unfold? And I think being able, 4 weeks out, being able to get back into the pool, I was still able, so by week 2, I was able to run. I was able to do all my other training. With 4 weeks to go, I got back in the pool and I could kind of swim. I was swimming with a buoy, which kind of just helped me a little bit. And it didn't have full range of motion, but I could swim without pain. So I figured, you know what? If I have to doggy paddle, I'll doggy paddle, because I know doggy paddling, I can still make the cutoff. So I think that's the moment I knew, okay, I'm going to race no matter what. And to be honest, I ended up having my best Ironman swim by like a couple minutes.
20 something.
121, 122. Yeah. And
because you probably had no expectations.
And that's it. And I think what also has helped me working, so I started training with Chris Houth, so Rich's coach. Mm-hmm. And Chris helped change, I think, my mindset and my perspective on training, on race, just on the whole sport, which is why I made a change. It was just not that there was anything wrong with my previous coach. I just after doing it for a couple of years, it was all so new to me. I just wanted a different perspective. So I kind of went into the day with a different expectation and a different, just more calm.
That's
a different perspective.
That's the way to go
your
into a
approach
race.
And
More
so
calm.
so whereas since I started Ironman, like I kind of had just where I'm at swimming. I don't have a swim background, so I've always said like, okay, like 120 is an average Ironman swim. Like I want to swim a 120. That's kind of been like a goal of mine. So taking that away and going into the swim, and the swim start for Arizona was very, I don't want to say the chaotic, but they made this really narrow chute. And so what happened was everyone who was trying to seed up couldn't move up. It was almost, I thought there was going to be a fight because like a kind of like started getting almost like a scrum where the guys that wanted to move up, the more aggressive people, they're like, I can't move up. And I kind of was in that moment. I was like, man, I need to move up. But then I realized, I looked around, everyone that was around me was going to swim my speed. So it didn't matter that we were behind people that were, 2-hour swimmers. It didn't really matter. And so I said,
you can like get worked up about it.
yeah.
Or you can
So
just be calm.
and everyone was, it was incredible how angry everyone was getting. Everyone was freaking out. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. And so coming down the ramp, I kind of looked at the buoys and looked where everyone was swimming. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. And I jumped in the water and I actually swam to the outside of everyone. And I looped around all the slower swimmers and then just took a straight line. And I feel like growing up surfing, I got scuba certified when I was 12. I'm very comfortable in open water and I swim open water a lot. A lot of people, primarily pool swimmers. So I feel like my sighting's really good. And so I was actually able, the arm felt okay, but I eased into the day. So after I swam around everyone, rather than going out, which is what I've been doing, going out and then fading really hard, I built into the day. And I just concentrate on my breathing and my stroke. And I'm like, wow, this is really easy. I'm like, this water tastes horrible, but you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. Right. And what I really realized was happening is every 1,000 yards or so, I was moving through another pack of people. And then when I made the final buoy turn, I saw everyone swimming this direction. And I'm like, what the hell? People were just, because
hugging the
against the concrete wall. And so they're adding on, I don't know how many yards, but I made a hard 90-degree turn and I'm swimming straight at a buoy. And so I actually swam and then they had to come all the way back around. So I literally, the guy in the kayak just going along with me and I'm like looking around and there was one other dude with me. And I'm like, this is great. And for the first time since doing an Ironman race, I was able to then pick up the speed to the last buoy and get out of the water. And I got out and my arm felt great. And I knew at that moment, like, today's going to be a decent day,
Yeah.
And so I kind of went into it, with a whole different set of expectations and really built through the day. And the arm actually ended up bothering me more so on the run, just out of fatigue, kind of started to, it was a little spaghetti-like and dangle there. And it really impacted me in the back half of the run, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot for the next race.
What'd you learn? What's something that you're going to take away for the next race?
Well, definitely building into the day.
Yeah,
that is a big one.
That's a really big concept because
it's the base, but so many people don't get it.
They're rested, they feel great, and they're like, I've never felt this good. I'm going for it. Where they've never done that before.
Building into the day. Staying steady on the bike and staying, true to myself and true to my fitness and not, because it's so easy, especially on a course like that, that's flat, people riding really hard. And what's funny is all these people that passed me on the bike, 5 miles into the run, I ran right past them.
Of course you did.
And so really, again, thanks to Chris, really setting up, really realizing that Ironman is about setting yourself up for a run. And that's all it is.
Yeah. Like at mile 18 of the run, then go unleash it.
Yeah.
That's exactly, you want to build into the day because, regardless of what your opinion of Ironman might be, like you can't deny putting those distances and those 3 disciplines together is a tough day.
Yeah.
It's a tough day and it's going to come with a lot of sensation. And there's going to be a lot of challenges along that journey to get there. What do you feel about, you had this experience where you were calm and you saw all these people around you expending like this kind of angry energy, which is really just like leakage, call it energy leakage. What did you take away from that power of being calm as opposed to going into the anger?
Well, I think you nailed it. It was just that knowing that there was no reason to expend the energy. And too often in life, we get worked up. It's funny because the staff of the restaurant talks about this because a lot of them know me pre-triathlon and now. And my temperament has changed. But I tell people, if you go out and train 2 to 4 hours a day, you're not going to be angry. Like, you're gonna let it all go, and you're gonna be able to go through your day in such a better place. And I think I quickly realized, just like being able to realize whether it was on the bike and getting caught up in the moment and going faster, trying to keep up with someone, just realizing like this is a long day. Like there's no reason, and if I get worked up right now, the day is gonna go sour really quickly.
So what's next?
Santa Rosa again, Ironman Santa Rosa. So we got that in May, Ironman Mont Tremblant, and then I'm going to run my first 50K in the fall.
Nice. Where's that going to be?
I'm going to do the Rocky Peaks because it was local. Seems easy. I'm all about...
Seems easy.
No, I mean, I'm talking not the race. I'm just logistically. If it's something I can jump in the car and drive to, that's easy. Yeah. If it's packing up and traveling, actually, it's funny because Jen and I had never spent more than a few hours in the car together. So I did Santa Rosa this past fall, and the drive from here to there is 6 hours, and we survived it. So I told her, I said, pretty much 6 to 7 hour range, we're good. I go, beyond that, we're flying.
We were 6 months in a car together. That little one that's in your driveway. Yeah. Awesome. And people can follow you and get a hold of you on Instagram.
Instagram is my only social media.
It's a good one to choose.
What's your handle?
Jared Simons _chef.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving all that great insight. Psyched to finally connect with you in the physical.
Likewise.